Okay, so this is chapter 12 or 7, I'm sorry, chapter 7, coastal zones and processes. And we're going to be starting with coastal processes. So, why do some beaches look different than others? Why don't they all look like this? This is kind of what I consider like your typical Florida beach, and this is like your California beach. And a lot of that really comes down to its tectonic setting. This is on a passive margin or your divergent boundary here where things are really kind of sinking and there's not much tectonic activity. And on the West Coast, we have our active margins. These are commonly either really were recently subduction zones or they currently are. Um, and everything's rising. We have the accumulation zones and the volcanoes and everything happening there. Um, so here the land is coming up, and here the land is going down on your passive margins. Other things go into effect is like the type of rock, how easily does it weather, what is the energy of the water, even your vegetation can play a difference in how your coast is going to look. Beaches, when we think coast, we think beaches. And so here are our beaches. So we have the berm section of the beach, which is this flat area, and then the beach face where it slopes and where it's hit by the waves. We can have sandy, rocky, or gravelly beaches. The difference here really is because of the energy in the waves. So at this beach, the energy is strong enough to carry these sand-sized grains out into the ocean with it. And at this beach, it's probably a much calmer environment, and the waves don't have enough energy to carry the sand grains away. Um, wind. Oh yes, and then the dunes. So wind will come in from the ocean and it picks up the sands and sills and then drops it at the back of the beach in these sand dunes. I think even our Great Lakes have sand dunes behind the beaches. It's very common. Um, okay, so waves, tides, and currents. So I think we all know what currents are. These are where the bodies of water move in a definable direction. Certain parts of the ocean move and certain like conveyor belts, like the West Coast, the major currents come up from Alaska, and that's why the waters there are so cold. And then the East Coast, the water is flowing more up from the equator, and that's why it's so warm right there. Um, Milling, the erosion of the sand at the beach from sand-laden waves. So just hitting it with not just water, but also with sand in the water as well. Um, so waves kind of travel in this little circular motion I have scribbled on right here. They kind of move in this little circular motion. And then as they come in and they start getting closer and closer to the shore, once the bottom of that wave hits ground, if you will, um, that's when the wave breaks. Okay. Tides, rise and fall with the moon. There are spring tides and neap tides. So spring tides are much larger because the moon's gravity is in line with the sun's gravity. So, like all this gravity is pulling in one direction. Neap tide is not as strong because the moon is not kind of being backed up by the sun's gravity here. So, um, it just doesn't bear as much weight, if you will, so not as large. Um, Longshore currents. So waves don't really come in exactly perpendicular to the coast. They come in at an angle, and so they come in at an angle and they pick up sand grains from here on the beach and deposit them downstream or down current. Um, we call that littoral drift from the longshore current. Storm surges, these come in with storms. You hear about them with hurricanes. In fact, I think a lot of the flooding that you hear about with hurricanes isn't really from the rain, it's from these storm surges that happen. And then you can have a storm tide, which is where the storm surge comes in with the tide, and it just makes it really, really worse. Um, Here we have a reworking of the geometry, I guess, of the coast here with a storm surge and kind of, I guess, the damage it can do, where it has completely eroded away these back dunes, and then all that sediment then becomes deposited here on the beach face. So, in a way, it's building up the beach. You might end up with a wider berm here. But if you were thinking about putting a house or something up here, you're not going to be all that happy about it. All right, and then our next talk is going to be on tectonics affecting coast coastal areas.